The last thing Hana Adeyemi expected on a luxury cruise was a billionaire grabbing her wrist and calling her his wife. One moment she was balancing a plate with 3 stolen mini cheesecakes from the VIP dessert table, the kind of small crime she had absolutely no remorse about. The next, a tall stranger in a charcoal suit stepped directly into her path. His eyes, sharp, dark, unreadable, met hers for half a second. Then he took the plate out of her hand, set it on the nearest table, gripped her wrist, and steered her toward a group of approaching guests. "Excuse me," Hana hissed. "Smile." "What? Please smile." "Why would I smile at you? You just stole my cheesecake." The stranger's voice dropped low. "Because if you scream right now, this gets much worse for both of us." That, Hana said, is not a reassuring sentence. Before she could pull free, an older man in an immaculate cream blazer approached, the kind of wealthy that smelled like private jets. Beside him walked a young woman with sharp eyes and an expression that could curdle milk. The stranger smiled like nothing was wrong. "Mr. Yoon." "Min-jun." The older man's voice was warm. Hana mouthed the name silently. Min-jun. At least now she knew who was currently kidnapping her evening. Min-jun placed a steady hand on her lower back. "I'd like you to meet my wife." Hana. Hana nearly dropped what was left of her dignity. "Wife?" Mr. Yoon's eyebrows rose with pleasant surprise. "You never mentioned getting married." "We prefer privacy," Min-jun said smoothly. The young woman beside, Mr. Yoon, narrowed her eyes immediately. Hana noticed. Great. One of them believed the lie completely. The other one wanted to dissect it. This was about to be a very long cruise. Hana Adeyemi was 26, broke in the specific way that smiled through job interviews, and currently working a contest winner spot on the Myri Star, a luxury liner that smelled like money she didn't have. She'd entered the raffle as a joke, won it as a miracle, and spent the first 2 days of the cruise quietly stealing desserts from rooms she wasn't invited into because the universe owed her at least that much. She had a mother back in Lagos with a bad hip and worse insurance. A business idea she'd been carrying in a notebook for 3 years, and exactly $400 in her checking account. None of that mattered right now, because the man currently holding her wrist like she was a business asset was Min-jun Park, and apparently he was a billionaire. After the Yoons finally drifted into the crowd, Hana spun on him. "What was that?" Min-jun exhaled slowly. "Thank you." "Thank you? You introduced me as your wife." "I did." "You lied to a room full of people." "I did." "You used me." "I did." He said it without flinching, which somehow made it worse. Hana pointed toward the exit. "Wonderful. I'm leaving. I can pay you." She froze mid-turn. Before Min-jun could explain, a second man appeared, practically materializing from nowhere, moving with the frantic energy of someone who had survived on espresso and panic for several days straight. "Sir." He skidded to a stop, looked at Hana, looked at Min-jun, looked back at Hana. His eyes went wide. Oh, Hana asked. "You found a wife." "I did not find a wife," Min-jun said. The assistant nodded slowly, processing. "This is still better than my emergency plan." Min-jun's head snapped toward him. "You had an emergency plan?" "3, actually. Should I be worried?" "Probably." Hana laughed, a real, surprised laugh that startled all 3 of them. And for the first time since the cheesecake disaster began, Min-jun smiled. Small, brief, but real. Minutes later they sat in a private lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows facing endless dark water, and Min-jun finally explained everything. Mr. Yoon owned one of the largest private equity firms in East Asia, and Min-jun had spent 6 months negotiating a merger that would define his company's next decade. Mr. Yoon believed, with old-fashioned certainty, that stable men built stable companies. The problem? Min-jun wasn't married. The bigger problem? Mr. Yoon had shown up on this cruise without warning. The biggest problem? The woman who was supposed to play his fiancée had walked off the ship after a screaming match that morning. Hana listened, arms crossed, unimpressed. "So your solution was to grab a random woman holding stolen cheesecake." "It worked." "I hate that you're right." The assistant, whose name, she learned, was June, nodded solemnly. "That's what everyone says." Min-jun ignored him completely. "What would it take for you to keep this up until the cruise ends?" Hana crossed her arms tighter. "What exactly am I agreeing to?" "Attend events." "Okay. Dinners." "Fine." Act as my wife. Share a suite. Min-jun actually hesitated on that last part. Hana raised an eyebrow. Oh, now you're uncomfortable. Jun laughed so hard he nearly choked. Min-jun shot him a look that could strip paint, and Jun suddenly became very interested in the ceiling. Finally, Min-jun named a number. Hana stared, then stared harder, then checked his face for a joke that wasn't there. That's a ridiculous amount of money. It's reasonable. It's not. It is to me. She leaned back in the chair, and for the first time in years, she let herself actually picture what that money could mean. Her mother's surgery. The business plan gathering dust in her notebook. Breathing room. Actual, uncomplicated breathing room. This, she finally said, might be the strangest decision of my life. Is that a yes? Hana smiled. It's definitely a yes. None of them noticed the young woman from earlier watching from the doorway. Arms folded, eyes narrowed. Yoon had already decided one thing. Something about those two was a lie, and she intended to prove it. The next morning, Hana woke up in a suite bigger than her entire apartment, sat up too fast, and immediately laid back down to process it. There was a private balcony, fresh orchids on every surface, and a fruit basket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A knock at the door produced Jun, holding 2 coffees and a tray of pastries. Good morning. Why are you here? Bribery. She accepted the coffee. Fair enough. I knew we'd get along. Breakfast with Min-jun revealed exactly what kind of man she'd married on paper. Laptop open, phone buzzing, reports fanned across the table like a battlefield. Do you ever stop? She asked. He didn't look up. Stop what? Working. No, that's depressing. It keeps the company running. It also explains why you look tired. Jun nearly choked on his juice. Nobody talked to Min-jun like that. Nobody. Min-jun blinks, genuinely lohon. I look tired? Very. Jun put his head down to hide his laughing. For some reason, Hana found that hilarious too. The rest of the morning became fake marriage boot camp. Jun had prepared notes. Actual notes. 40 pages of them. You're joking, Hana said. I never joke about contingency planning. Who makes a marriage study guide for a fake marriage? Jun proudly raised his hand. Min-jun put his face in his palm. Please don't encourage him. Naturally, Hana encouraged him completely. By lunchtime, they'd built an entire fictional love story. Met in Seoul, argued over coffee, accidentally booked the same hotel room, became friends, fell in love, got married, adopted a dog, lost a dog, found a dog. By the third retelling, neither of them could remember which details were invented and which had somehow become real in their heads. At one point, Hana casually asked Min-jun about their imaginary dog's name. It took Jun several seconds to remember the dog didn't exist. Across the dining room, Seo-yeon watched everything with growing confusion. Fake couples usually looked fake, stiff, over-rehearsed, careful. These two looked comfortable. Too comfortable. Something about it still didn't sit right with her, even if she couldn't yet say why. That evening, the ship hosted a formal dinner. Hana wore a deep gold gown borrowed from the suite's closet. Min-jun wore black. When they walked into the ballroom together, dozens of heads turned. People are staring, Hana murmured. You get used to it. I don't want to get used to it. Fair. Mr. Yoon greeted them with open warmth. Seo-yeon greeted them with quiet suspicion. Progress was happening, just not the kind Hana wanted. By the third day, Seo-yeon had appointed herself private investigator, at least in her own mind. Hana spotted her near the breakfast buffet, then the pool, then the elevators, then somehow outside the spa. She's following us, Hana whispered. Min-jun glanced over his shoulder, unbuthill. Yes, you sound calm about that. I negotiate billion-dollar mergers. This is less stressful. Hana laughed despite herself. Across the deck, Seo-yeon scribbled into a small notebook. Is she taking notes? Hana asked. Apparently. What kind of person brings an investigation notebook on vacation? Min-jun looked at his side piece. The kind who steals desserts from VIP receptions. That was one time. It was 4. You counted. That afternoon, Mr. Yoon invited them to a private lunch. The invitation made Seo-yeon smile immediately, which worried everyone, especially Jun. She has a plan, Hana said. Definitely. Should we be concerned? Absolutely. The lunch began pleasantly. Too pleasantly. Mr. Yoon asked about their travels. Hana improvised. He asked about their wedding. She improvised harder. He asked about their families. She was starting to impress herself. Then Seo-yeon struck. What was Min-jun wearing the first time you met? Silence. Hana froze. Min-jun froze. Jun looked like he was about to faint into his soup. Then Hana smiled. A terrible tea. Min-jun fauned. It wasn't terrible. Hana turned to him, triumphant. See? He remembers. Mr. Yoon laughed warmly. Seo-yeon rolled her eyes. But the answer had worked, and that bothered her more than anything else that day. That evening, Jun was given a single mission: distract Seo-yeon. His first attempt lasted 12 seconds. His second lasted 9. His third ended with him walking directly into a glass door. Somehow, every failure made Seo-yeon laugh harder, which only encouraged him. As the sun dropped into the ocean in long orange streaks, Hana stood alone on the upper deck. Footsteps approached behind her. Min-jun. He stopped beside her. Neither spoke for a while. The silence felt strangely comfortable. You know, Hana finally said, when I won this cruise, I pictured beaches, cocktails, maybe a tan. Reasonable. I did not picture a fake marriage. No, I definitely did not picture your stolen cheesecake. Min-jun laughed, low and quiet, and neither of them noticed how naturally the conversation kept moving or how often they were smiling now, or that Seo-yeon was watching them from a distance, no longer wondering if they were pretending, but wondering if they were starting to forget that they were. By the fourth day, the lies had become routine. Breakfast, events, dinners, survive, repeat. And somewhere along the way, pretending had gotten dangerously easy. That afternoon, they wandered through the ship's luxury shopping deck. Hana stopped in front of a necklace behind reinforced glass, the price tag alone nearly stopping her heart. Who buys this? A few people. It costs more than my first car. That's unfortunate. Your definition of unfortunate is broken. He smiled slightly. Hana pointed at his face dramatically. There. That smile. What about it? You only do that when you're being smug. I have no idea what you're referring to. You absolutely do. A passing couple smiled warmly at them. The wife whispered something to her husband, who looked delighted. Hana frowned. Why are they smiling at us? They probably think we're newlyweds. We're fake newlyweds. They don't know that. Neither of them said anything else for a long moment. That evening, Mr. Yoon invited them to another private dinner. Seo-yeon's expression on the way and told Hana everything she needed to know. The woman looked far too pleased. The dinner started normally. Too normally. Then Seo-yeon turned the conversation directly at Hana. What's Min-jun's biggest fear? The table went silent. Min-jun ist jo zeitend. Jun looked ready to throw himself overboard. Hana thought for a moment, then answered honestly. Disappointing people. The room stilled. Even Min-jun looked stunned, because that hadn't come from any rehearsed script. It was something Hana had actually noticed. The way he worked constantly, carried weight constantly, pushed himself past exhaustion, because somewhere underneath the empire was a man terrified of letting everyone down. For a brief second their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Seo-yeon noticed, and for the first time, doubt crept into her certainty. Later, alone on the promenade deck, Seo-yeon found Jun. Can I ask you something? He straightened instantly. Always. Be honest. His confidence collapsed. Oh no. Are they actually in love? Jun opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That, he said slowly, is becoming a genuinely complicated question. The next morning, an announcement rippled through the ship. The annual couples challenge. 3 events. 1 winning couple. A cash prize, and worse, a spotlight neither Hana nor Min-jun wanted anywhere near them. Absolutely not, Hana said. Agreed, said Min-jun. Jun looked thrilled. This is incredible. It really isn't, they said in unison. Mr. Yoon appeared at their table moments later. You two are participating. Neither of them had a choice. The first event was a dance competition, a disaster waiting to happen. At least until practice started and Min-jun placed a hand on her waist and moved with shocking confidence. You can dance. Hana blinked. A little. A little is an understatement. You lied. I omitted information. That's billionaire for lying. For the first time in days, Min-jun laughed openly, surprising even himself. The competition that evening went better than either expected. They weren't perfect, they were natural, Two people who actually liked being near each other. The applause afterward felt like it belonged to someone else's relationship. The second event was a couple's trivia round. What's your spouse's most annoying habit? The host asked. Hana's paddle shot up instantly. The crowd roared. Min-jun sighed. You work too much, she said. You answered too fast. Because I'm right. The next question landed heavier. What's your spouse's best quality? The room went quiet. Hana glanced at Min-jun. He's dependable. If he says he'll do something, he does it. The applause that followed felt different. Min-jun looked away, and for reasons he couldn't explain, the answer affected him more than it should have. The final event was cooking, which dissolved into chaos almost immediately. Jun somehow set off a smoke alarm despite not participating in any capacity. Nobody, including Jun, understood how. Seo-yeon laughed so hard she nearly dropped her plate, and when she grabbed his arm to steady herself, he completely forgot how to form words. Hana and Min-jun finished second overall. Neither of them cared about the placement, because both had quietly realized something far more dangerous. They were looking forward to being near each other, even when no one else was watching. That night, unable to sleep, Hana stepped out onto the balcony. The sea breeze cooled her face, but did nothing for the noise in her head. Footsteps approached. Min-jun. He stopped beside her. For a while, neither spoke. You know, she finally said, before this cruise I thought billionaires spent their lives on yachts drinking champagne. I wish. So what do you actually do? Meetings. Reports. Lawyers. She shuddered theatrically. That sounds awful. He laughed, surprising himself again, and Hana smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was rare. Eventually, he told her about his father, about inheriting responsibility before he was old enough to understand its weight, about expectations that never stopped arriving. Hana listened quietly, and for the first time she understood. This wasn't ambition. It was pressure, years of it compounding. When he finished, she spoke softly. My dad always told me to dream bigger, but every time I tried, something got in the way. Her smile turned sad. Money, usually. She looked toward the ocean. Then I went a cruise and met a very annoying billionaire. Min-jun left quietly. Their eyes met and held. The air felt warmer than it should have. Everything slowed. He noticed the way her curls moved in the wind. She noticed how gentle he became when no one important was watching. For one suspended second, something almost happened. Then the balcony door slammed open and Jun stumbled out, soaking wet. Hana burst out laughing immediately. Min-jun closed his eyes. What happened this time? Decorative fountain. It attacked me. It did not attack you. You weren't there. What were you even doing? Jun looked embarrassed, which never meant anything good. Talking to Seo-yeon. Min-jun understood instantly. So you fell into a fountain trying to impress her. Maybe. Hana was laughing too hard to stand up straight. Even Min-jun started laughing, and for a few minutes the balcony was nothing but noise and warmth. Then Jun looked between them, completely unfiltered. You know, I think you two are actually falling in love. Silence. Oh, Jun said, already backing toward the door. I have made a mistake. A catastrophic mistake, Hana said. A massive mistake, Min-jun agreed. Jun vanished inside. The door clicked shut, and neither Hana nor Min-jun said a word, because the problem wasn't what he'd said. The problem was that neither of them could deny it. Breakfast the next morning was unbearable. Hana stared at her plate like it owed her money. Min-jun developed a sudden, intense fascination with his coffee cup. Jun spent the entire meal pretending to answer emails on a phone that was switched off. Nobody mentioned the balcony. Seo-yeon, however, had stopped worrying about feelings and started chasing facts. That afternoon, searching for a misplaced folder near the ship's conference suite, she overheard a fragment of conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Jun, speaking low to one of Min-jun's lawyers. The agreement terminates the day the cruise ends. Seo-yeon froze. Agreement. The lawyer kept talking. Mr. Okafor never expected it to get this complicated. Complicated. Everything clicked into place at once. The marriage. The inconsistencies. The rehearsed answers that weren't quite rehearsed enough. Hours later, she found Hana alone on the observation deck. Ocean stretching out behind her like a held breath. You're not married, Seo-yeon said. Not question. Hana's stomach dropped. The silence answered before she could. I knew it. Seo Yun's voice wasn't triumphant. It sounded almost disappointed. It's not as simple as you think, Hana said. Then explain it to me. Hana wanted to. She really did. But every explanation sounded exactly as bad as the truth, because it was the truth, a lie that had started clean and gotten real people tangled inside it. That evening, the truth reached Mr. Yun. The merger collapsed within the hour. Trust evaporated across the entire ship, and the mood shifted overnight from celebration to something cold and careful. Min-jun found Hana near the bow, wind whipping her hair across her face. You told her? No. Then how did she find out? I don't know. He turned away, and the disappointment in his posture hurt more than Hana expected. You should have trusted me, he said. Trusted you? Her voice cracked sharper than she intended. You hired me. The words landed like a slap, and silence followed. Long, painful, unfixable feeling silence. Hana finally stepped back, forcing a smile that didn't reach anywhere close to her eyes. I think we both forgot this started as a business arrangement. She walked away. And for the first time since this whole disaster began, Min-jun let her go. The next day, the sky turned the color of a bruise. Wind battered the ship's windows. Activities were canceled, passengers stayed indoors, and the entire mood of the Myri Star matched the storm outside, especially Min-jun's. He spent the day staring out a window, replaying everything, regretting the silence between them more than he regretted anything in years. Eventually, Jun let himself in. He knew his boss was dangerous when he was this quiet. Sir. No response. Sir. Still nothing. Sir, if you keep staring into the middle distance like that, people are going to think you're auditioning for something. Min-jun finally looked up. Jun sat down across from him. Do you love her? The question hung there, heavier than the storm outside. Min-jun didn't answer right away, because for the first time, he understood exactly why he'd spent the last 2 days avoiding the question entirely. Finally, he nodded. Yes. Good. Jun's voice lost its usual joking edge. Now stop being an idiot. You spent your whole life building companies. Build something that actually matters. Meanwhile, Seo Yun found Hana sitting alone in a quiet lounge. Neither spoke for a long moment. I owe you an apology, Seo Yun finally said. Hana looked up, surprised. For what? Assuming the worst the whole time. Hana laughed softly, without much humor in it. You weren't entirely wrong. Maybe not. Seo Yun sat beside her. But the feelings looked real. From where I was standing, they still do. The words hit harder than Hana expected, mostly because she already knew they were true. That night, as the storm reached its peak and rain hammered the windows, Min-jun made a decision. No more hiding behind contracts. No more letting fear of one disappointed man control every choice he made. He was going to find Hana. And this time, he was going to tell her the truth, all of it. The final evening of the cruise arrived calm, the storm having passed some time before dawn. The ship gathered for the farewell gala, glittering and loud, and Hana attended only because there was no graceful way to avoid it. Her plan was simple. Get through the night, leave quietly in the morning, forget the cruise, forget the fake marriage, forget the billionaire who had somehow gotten under every defense she had left. That had been the plan. Then Min-jun walked onto the stage. The room slowly went quiet. Hana looked up, heart already sinking with dread. He took the microphone, something he visibly hated doing, and found her in the crowd immediately. His eyes didn't move from her face. I owe everyone here an apology, he said. The room stilled completely. Mr. Yun watched carefully from the front. Seo Yun smiled like she already knew what was coming. Jun looked like he might actually pass out from the tension. When this cruise began, I made a mistake. Whispers rippled outward. The marriage was never real. I told a lie because I was afraid of losing a deal that meant everything to me. The whispers grew louder, sharper. Then he looked directly at Hana, and something in the room shifted entirely, because what came next wasn't part of any lie. But somewhere along the way, the feeling stopped being part of the act. Hana's breath caught in her throat. Min-jun stepped off the stage and crossed the ballroom straight toward her. Every guest watched. Nobody spoke. He stopped in front of her, and for the first time all week, the most composed man on the ship looked genuinely nervous. Hana. She managed a soft, yes? I don't want a contract. Her eyes started to burn. I don't want a fake marriage. He took her hand. I want something real. The silence held for exactly 1 second before Hana laughed through unexpected tears, because honestly, after everything, that felt about right. You know, she said, you could have just asked me on a date. The ballroom erupted into laughter. Even Mr. Yoon smiled. Min-jun shook his head. You make everything difficult. And yet, here you are. Here I am. This time, when Hana kissed him, nobody was pretending. The room burst into applause around them, and neither of them heard a second of it. Later that night, Mr. Yoon approached Min-jun privately and extended his hand. You should have told me the truth sooner. I know, but I respect honesty more than I respect a convenient lie. The merger was back on, not because of the marriage, but because of what came after it. Near the exit, Jun worked up the courage to say goodbye to Seo-yeon with absolutely no plan, which was completely normal for him. So he started. So, she replied. A long, awkward pause. If you ever need someone to fall into another fountain, he said, you know where to find me. Seo-yeon laughed. That's your closing line? I had a better one. I forgot it. She reached into her purse and handed him a small card. His eyes went wide. A room key? She laughed harder. No. He flipped it over. A phone number. Her phone number. He stared at it for a long, stunned moment, then looked up and back down, then up again. I think this might be the greatest moment of my life. Across the room, Min-jun sighed. That's depressing. Hana laughed. Seo-yeon laughed. Even Jun laughed at himself. As the ship sailed toward its final port, the four of them stood together at the railing, watching the water turn gold under the morning sun. The fake marriage was over. The real story was only just beginning. If this had you smiling, hit like and let us know in the comments what you would have done in Hana's shoes, stolen cheesecake, and all. Subscribe for more stories just like this one, because the next one might just be the best yet.